I didn't need to be close to understand you. Some things don't need distance to disappear, and some people don't need closeness to be felt. You were never loud in the way you existed. You didn't enter spaces trying to be seen. You didn't carry yourself like someone who needed attention to feel real. And maybe that's exactly why you stayed in my thoughts longer than anything loud ever could. Because you were quiet, but not empty. You were calm, but not distant. You were soft, but never weak. There's a difference, you know, between someone who hides, and someone who simply chooses what deserves to be seen. And you choose. I noticed that. I noticed the way your smile doesn't rush into existence. It arrives carefully, like it asks permission from your heart before it shows itself to the world. I noticed how your eyes don't always reveal everything you feel, but they never lie either. There's a hesitation in you, not out of fear, but out of understanding. Like you've already learned what happens when emotions are given too freely to people who don't know how to hold them. And maybe that's why you move the way you do, carefully, quietly, intentionally. Not because you're closed, but because you're aware. And that awareness, it says more about your heart than any loud expression ever could. Sometimes I think about how people must misunderstand you. They probably think you're distant, or hard to read, or maybe even indifferent. But they don't see what I see. They don't see how much you actually feel, how deeply things settle inside you, how much you carry without ever announcing it. Because you don't carry your emotions like noise. You carry them like something sacred. Something that isn't meant for everyone to touch. And honestly, I respect that more than you realize. Because not everyone deserves access to a heart like yours. Not everyone deserves to understand the layers you hold. And maybe you've already learned that the hard way. Maybe there were moments, quiet ones, where you gave a little more than you should have. Where you trusted, where you opened, where you allowed someone to step into your world, and instead of holding it gently, they handled it carelessly. Not in a dramatic way, not in a way that breaks loudly, but in those subtle ways that leave quiet damage behind. The kind that teaches you to pause before smiling. The kind that teaches you to think before opening up. The kind that teaches you to protect your peace, even if it means stepping back. And now you exist differently. You still care. You still feel. You still notice everything. But you don't give it away the same way anymore. And I see that. I see the strength in it. Because people think strength is loud, they think it's bold, they think it's obvious. But real strength looks like you. It looks like someone who still chooses kindness, even after learning how easily it can be taken for granted. It looks like someone who still feels deeply, even after realizing how often feelings go misunderstood. It looks like someone who still stays soft, in a world that constantly tries to harden people. And that kind of strength, it's rare. It's the kind that doesn't need recognition to exist. The kind that doesn't demand validation. The kind that simply is. You don't even realize how powerful that makes you. You probably think you're just being careful. But what you're actually doing is protecting something valuable. Your heart isn't closed. It's selective. And there's a quiet beauty in that. Because when someone like you finally lets someone in, it's never random. It's never careless. It means something. It always means something. And that's what makes you different. That's what makes you stay in someone's thoughts, even when you're not around. You don't leave loud impressions, you leave lasting ones. Sometimes I wonder what your silence holds. Not the silence people see, but the one you sit with when you're alone. The thoughts you don't share. The feelings you don't explain. The questions you ask yourself when no one is there to hear them. Do you ever sit there, scrolling aimlessly, not really paying attention, just letting your mind wander somewhere deeper? Do you ever pause, mid-thought, feeling something you can't fully put into words? I feel like you do. I feel like your mind isn't a noisy place, but it's not empty either. It's layered. Quietly complex. The kind of place where emotions don't shout, they settle. And sometimes, they stay longer than they should. And in those moments, I wonder if you ever wish someone could just understand, without you having to explain everything. Without you having to break your thoughts into pieces just so they make sense to someone else. Because I think that's what you really crave. Not attention. Not noise. Not validation from the world. Just understanding. Simple, quiet, real understanding. The kind that doesn't question your feelings. The kind that doesn't rush you. The kind that doesn't make you feel like you're too much or too quiet or too different. Just someone who sees you, and doesn't try to change what they see. And if I'm being honest, that's what I feel when I think about you. Not something loud. Not something overwhelming. Just something steady. Like a calm presence in the middle of everything chaotic. Like a feeling that doesn't need to prove itself to exist. And maybe that's why I keep talking like this. Because when I think of you, my words don't feel forced. They don't feel rushed. They just come. Slowly. Naturally. Like they've been waiting for a place to land. And somehow, you feel like that place. Not because I know everything about you. Not because I've heard all your stories. But because I can feel the kind of person you are, even in silence. And that feeling, it's not something I ignore. It's not something I rush to define either. It's just something I sit with. Something I let exist, the same way you exist. Quietly, gently, but meaningfully. And maybe that's enough for now. And maybe that's enough for now. But every time I tell myself that, every time I think I've said everything I needed to say, something in me doesn't stay quiet. There's always another thought, another feeling, another soft truth about you that rises slowly, like it was waiting for the right moment to be heard. And I've realized something: you're not the kind of person who can be understood in one moment. You're not a quick story. You're not something simple. You're something that reveals itself in layers, not because you're hiding, but because you value depth over display. And that changes everything. Because most people are used to things being easy, fast, obvious. But you're not meant to be understood that way. You're meant to be felt first, and understood slowly. That's why people either miss you completely, or think about you longer than they expected. There's no in-between with someone like you. And I think that's something you don't even fully realize. You probably think you're just being yourself. Just moving through life quietly. Just existing without trying to leave an impact. But you do. You leave impact in ways that don't shout. In the way someone remembers the calm you brought into a moment. In the way someone replays a small interaction with you without knowing why it stayed. In the way your silence feels more meaningful than someone else's loud presence. That's not ordinary. That's something rare. And maybe you've never been told that clearly. Or maybe when you were told, you didn't fully believe it. Because you're not the type to hold on to compliments. You hear them, you acknowledge them, but you don't let them settle too deeply. Like a part of you still questions them. Like a part of you wonders. Do they really see me, or just what I show? And that question, that quiet doubt, it says a lot about your past. It says you've learned not to accept everything at face value. It says you've experienced moments where words didn't match actions. Where people said they understood, but didn't. Where people said they cared, but didn't show it in the way that mattered. And now you don't just listen to what people say. You feel what they mean. You read between lines. You notice tone. You sense intention. And because of that, you don't open easily. Not fully. Not quickly. And honestly, that's not something to fix. That's something to respect. Because your heart isn't something that should be rushed open. It's something that deserves patience. It deserves someone who understands that closeness with you isn't built in loud moments, it's built in quiet consistency. In small things. In presence. In the way someone stays, without trying to force anything. And if I'm being real with you, that's the only way I'd ever want to be around you anyway. Not by breaking your walls. Not by pushing your boundaries. But by sitting close enough, that one day, you don't feel the need to keep them up so tightly. Not because I asked you to lower them, but because you felt safe enough to. There's a difference. A big difference. And I think you understand that difference better than most. Because you've probably experienced both. You've experienced people who tried to rush you, who wanted quick access to your thoughts, your feelings, your heart, and you've experienced how uncomfortable that feels. How unnatural it feels. How it makes you step back, even if part of you wanted to stay. And then, maybe there were moments where someone didn't rush you. Where someone just stayed calm. Didn't question your silence. Didn't pressure your emotions. Didn't demand anything from you. And in those moments, you felt something different. Something lighter. Something safe. Something you didn't have to protect yourself against. That's the kind of space you deserve. Not something intense. Not something overwhelming. Just something real. Something that lets you exist without feeling like you have to adjust yourself. And I think that's why I keep speaking to you like this. Because I don't want to be another voice that feels loud in your world. I don't want to be another presence that makes you feel like you need to respond a certain way. I just want to be understood by you, the same way I'm trying to understand you. Nothing more complicated than that. Nothing forced. Nothing rushed. Just something that feels right in a quiet way. You know what I think about sometimes? I think about how you must look when you're truly at peace. Not the version people see every day, but the real one. When you're not thinking too much. When you're not carrying anything heavy. When your mind finally feels still. I feel like your whole presence softens even more in those moments. Like your smile becomes easier. Like your eyes don't carry that subtle weight anymore. Like your energy feels lighter, freer. And I wonder, how often you actually get to feel like that. Because people like you, people who think deeply, who feel quietly, who notice everything, don't always give themselves enough rest. Even when they look calm, their mind is still moving. Still observing. Still processing. Still holding things they don't say. And that kind of mind, it deserves peace. Real peace. Not distraction. Not temporary escape. But a space where nothing is expected from you. Where you don't have to respond. Where you don't have to understand anyone else. Where you don't have to be strong. Just a moment where you can exist without carrying anything. And if I could give you anything, it wouldn't be something loud or grand. It would be that. A quiet space. A calm presence. A feeling that says, you don't have to hold everything right now. Because I feel like you've been holding things for a long time. Not in a dramatic way, but in those subtle, constant ways that slowly become heavy. And maybe no one notices that. Maybe no one sees how much you manage internally. But I do. Or at least, I feel it. And that feeling, it makes me want to be gentle with you. Even in words, even in thoughts. Even in the way I imagine you listening to this right now. Because you don't need intensity. You don't need pressure. You don't need someone trying to figure you out like a puzzle. You just need someone who respects your pace. Your silence. your way of being. And honestly, that's not difficult. Not with someone like you. Because the more I think about you, the more I realize something simple but real: you're not hard to understand. You're just not loud about what you feel. And people confuse those two things. But I don't. I don't see you as complicated. I see you as meaningful. And meaningful things are never rushed. They're felt. They're understood slowly. They're appreciated over time. And that's exactly how I find myself thinking about you, not all at once, but again, and again, and again, like something that keeps unfolding quietly. And I don't mind that. I don't want it to be fast. I don't want it to be defined too quickly. Because something this calm, something this natural, doesn't need to be forced into words before it's ready. It just needs to be felt. And right now, that feeling is still here. Still steady. Still soft. Still unfinished. Like there's more, always a little more, waiting just beneath the surface.